Hi everyone. Uh, so uh, Today I'm going to explain you how to collect the logs in Splunk using the HTTP event collector. In our previous videos, we have seen like how to install Splunk Universal Forwarder and then how to do the configurations in order to push the data to Splunk, right? So in today's video, we will be covering up uh, the data ingestion part. However, this time we are not going to use Universal Forwarder. We will be using HTTP event collector. So this is another way of pushing the data to Splunk. And the good thing about using HTTP event collector is that it eliminates the need of Universal Forwarder. So you will not have to install Universal Forwarder and then do the relevant configurations in order to push the data to Splunk indexer or heavy forwarder. So for that, I have already spinned up one instance in AWS and I have already installed Splunk on that. So this is the Splunk instance which we are going to use for today's demo. So currently under main index, we do not have any data here, right? Okay, so now let's see like how we can configure HTTP event collector and then using that how we can start pushing the data to this. And to give you a background, like how does that work? So what happens when you use HTTP event collector? Uh, then Splunk expose its APIs. So I'll show you that using which endpoints you can access that API, and then we will be hitting those APIs in order to push the data to Splunk. So to configure it, you need to go to settings and then data inputs. So inside data inputs, you'll see lot many ways of getting data in Splunk. So one of them is HTTP event collector. So let's go inside that. And if you see warning here, it says all the tokens are currently disabled. So they can be enabled in the global settings. Okay, let's go there, enable them, default source type. So like while pushing the data from your application, if you do not uh, explicitly define any source type, it's going to use the default source type. So let me just put that as JSON. Default index, I will be using main. So these settings will come into picture if you do not explicitly define index and source type while pushing the data from your applications using the HTTP event collector. Default output group, I'm leaving it as it is. I'm not defining anything there. Since it's just for the demo, so I'm not going to use SSL as well. For this, we are going to use the default port, which is as 8088 for HTTP event collector. Okay, let's save it. So now the global settings has been saved. Let's see where are those. So this is my Splunk indexer, the server where that Splunk instance is running. So let's go to opt Splunk to see apps. And here we have this add-on called Splunk HTTP input. If you go inside this, it has, so earlier this local folder was not there. After enabling the global settings there from that instance, right? So those have come here inside local directory. Okay, so it has created inputs.com. And if you see, it has, you can see all those global settings here, what we configured through Splunk GUI. So SSL we didn't enable index, the default index we configured main, the default source type we configured JSON. Okay, so these settings are here now. Let's generate a new token. So uh, in HTTP event collector, it's token based authorization basically. So after setting up this, okay, so let's give it a name like test logs. Test logs, maybe HEC, HTTP event collector. Source name, I'm not going to use anything here. Description also I'm leaving it as it is. Okay, let's generate the token. Source type, if you want, we can define here. Otherwise, you can leave it automatically. So based on the data, Splunk can use the source type. And even while pushing the data also, you can define the source type there. So for this demo, we'll be using the curl command to call Splunk API endpoint to push the data. So we'll see. So I'm leaving it automatic index. So the enabled index and then default index. So like what all indexes can be used with this token that you can define here, and then what default index you want to use with this token. So at both the places, I'm just going to take main index review, and then so here you can see allowed indexes, right? So if you select other indexes as well, you will see those here. The default index is going to be main. Let's submit. So it has created this token, right? However, before using that token to push the data, let me show you what it has changed on the backend. So go back to, okay, let me do it again. So inside OPT Splunk etc apps, we have search app, right? Because we configured it on the search app only, search and reporting, right? So inside search app, if you go to local, you'll see this inputs.conf. So we can see that here, test logs, HEC, this is what we created, right? It's enabled, it's not disabled. Host, that's the name of this machine, Splunk indexer. So the index is allowed main, default index is also main. And this is the token that we can use for the authorization to push the data from our application to this Splunk instance. Okay, so this is done now. Let's start using this token to push the data to Splunk. So I'm going to use the API. Yeah, so this is the API endpoint format that we need to call. So protocol, in our case, we are going to use HTTP because we haven't enabled SSL. Host is the IP of the instance where we want to post the data. Port, we are using default port 8088. And then the endpoint, we are using services collectors. So there are few others as well that you can see on the Splunk's official website. Services collector and then /event. So we are going to use the tokens so authorization, and then instead of token, we need to pass the actual token. Source type, I'm going to use test HEP logs. So yeah, so if you remember, we have configured default source type there, right? Let me show you again. So we have configured okay, that will be under global settings. So the default source type we have configured JSON. However, I want to override that. So for that, I'm using test HEC logs. Event, I'm just going to post this raw event there. Maybe just hello world. Okay, so let's call this curl command. And this curl command, I'm going to execute it from one another server. So why I'm doing this is like maybe in your production environment, you have the applications running on different machines, right? So from there, you will have to push the data. So I'm going to call that curl command here, and you'll see the output, what output it prints here. So Splunk, I think this is the token. Let me recheck. Get inputs 2718 VA6. 718 VA6. So token looks correct. Okay, I think I didn't change the IP of the indexer. That's the fault, and that's why it's not able to connect, because this port 8088 is enabled on my current Splunk instance. So we need to pass the same IP here. So the IP of that is this one. Okay, so now let's call this curl command. Okay, so as you can see, the response, it's success for this curl call. Let's see if it has pushed the data to Splunk. Perfect. So we can see the data has started coming in, right? Let's do another call. Hello world from Splunk application, or not a Splunk application, maybe any custom application. Okay, so this is also success. Let's see. Perfect. So we can see this event has also come to our Splunk indexer, right? So that's how we can uh, use HTTP event collector to push the data to Splunk. And it's an another robust way of uh, pushing the data to Splunk. This way you do not need to configure Splunk Universal Forwarder. Okay, so that's it, I think. I mean, from here, like if you want to use it further, so this instance, if you want to treat this instance as a heavy forwarder, then you can obviously configure data forwarding, right? So from this instance, you can configure forwarding to some other instance. So if this instance you want to treat as a Splunk heavy forwarder, then you can configure forwarding. Maybe you have another instance which is acting as an indexer in your environment, so you can put that IP and port 9997 to start pushing the data to that. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it then for this demo session. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thanks.